right. So my goal, let's roll up the windows here. My goal was to get us to Red Rock Canyon. I typed in Red Rock Canyon in Google Maps and it took me somewhere completely different. Like completely different. Like I'm out in the middle of nowhere. My Google Maps, my cell phone has no service. I'm driving on all these back roads now trying to just get to a freeway so I can try to then get over to Red Rock Canyon. I don't know what happened. I went like a good 45 minutes west when I should have been going east, and I knew as I was driving, I was like, man, this trip says it's only going to be 2 hours, but I thought it was like 3 hours because I'm taking back roads. Well, now I'm trying to get to a freeway because these back roads are so in the middle of nowhere that like I have no service. So yeah, we're a wee bit lost. Oh God. Okay. Like literally in the middle of nowhere. Oh my gosh. Okay. We are in business. We have service now. Whew. Alrighty. Let's see. And there's tumbleweeds. Literally tumbleweeds right now. Red Rock Canyon State Park, Cantil, California. That's what we were wanting. An hour and 8 minutes. Alright, we'll do it. First places I went to when I moved here to Los Angeles. I came out here and did a photo shoot with an old friend. We climbed all over the rocks and like wore dresses and did our photo shoot, and I love this place. There's something so like the energy here is just really, really good. The drive when I got lost was kind of stressful, and immediately when I got here I was like, this feels right, this feels good. So yeah, Red Rock Canyon. There's 2 Red Rock Canyons. There's one in Nevada and one in California. This is the one in California. It's magical. I love it here. It's so beautiful. All right, so one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is that I think I'm in the midst of my midlife crisis. Like when I was younger, I used to always think that a midlife crisis was when, somebody went out and bought a sports car or bought a boat, or you would always see in movies that a midlife crisis was like a 45-year-old man that went and bought a sports car and like divorced his wife and had an affair with a 20-something-year-old. That's kind of like culturally what we think of when we think of a midlife crisis. And now that I'm in my mid-40s, I've realized that what a midlife crisis really is, or what it has been for me, is when you reach your mid-40s, and that's kind of the age where all of your ambitions and goals should start to be realized. And so it's like you stop and you pause because you're halfway through your career, because your career is really from your 20s until your 60s. So your 40s, you're at your midpoint, and you stop and you reflect on, am I reaching my goals? Does my life look the way I thought it would look? And the goals that I had in my 20s, are they actually the same goals that I have now? And it's interesting. I think the majority of people, once you reach your 40s, your life doesn't really look the way you thought it would in your 20s. And I think that the reason culturally we think of people as like buying a sports car or all of a sudden doing something crazy is because you reach this time in your life where you realize, okay, did I achieve my goals? Does my life look the way I thought it was going to? And now that I'm here at this point in my life, what direction am I going to go from here? Like, you start to do these pivots, and you start to realize that maybe the priorities that you had in your 20s that you set out for yourself aren't the same priorities that you have in your 40s. And the things that you wanted in your 20s, while you spent the last 20 years, or for me, I spent the last 20 years creating and developing this dream I had in my 20s, and now that I'm in my 40s, I'm like, I've realized a fair number of those dreams, but are they actually the dreams and goals that I want for the next 20 years? And so I'm really at that pivotal point in my life of thinking about, okay, here are the things that I've achieved, here are the things that I haven't, and what does that really mean for the next 20 years? And what are my priorities now that I'm having this shift? So my understanding of a midlife crisis now is not that it's a crisis. I think it's more of a midlife assessment. That's what I'm going to call it. So I am in my midlife assessment of, in my 20s, I really, really, really wanted to be a photographer. And I specifically, when I graduated college, wanted to be a photographer in the entertainment industry, working, on movie posters and working in the entertainment industry. And I am achieving a lot of those goals. But it's also important to stop and think about, okay, based on everything I've learned about life in the last 20 years, how are those achievements and some achievements that I have not had, how do those sit with my new set of priorities now that I have a better understanding of the world and how the world works, and having new kind of having a new understanding of life and culture and what's important to me. What do I want the next 20 years to look like? So I think a lot of people in their mid-40s, they start to make changes, they start to pivot, I think some people, they get married, they have kids, and maybe they got the 9-to-5 job, but they never prioritized their creative endeavors because they went the responsible route of getting, the job to pay for the family and the kids. And so then all of a sudden in their 40s, it looks like a midlife crisis to people because all of a sudden they take up guitar lessons or they start painting, and it's because they realize that one part of their self was unfulfilled because they were so busy working on this other aspect. So I'm kind of in that, I'm feeling like a lot of the career stuff that I dreamt of doing, I'm feeling good about where I got with a lot of that. But I am kind of making some pivots creatively, and also I think family is more important to me than it was in my 20s and 30s. I think some people, family is the most important thing, and so they get married and they have family and they nest and they do all of those things. But for me, I really prioritized my career, and now that I'm feeling like, okay, I have a portfolio that I'm comfortable with, I'm really wanting to prioritize people in my life that I love. And that doesn't necessarily mean a romantic relationship, but it means things like making sure that I spend time with my mom and my brother and my nephew and my nieces and friends, and just really valuing the relationships in my life, because I really do feel like, for me, I was very career motivated and career focused all throughout my 20s and 30s, and I'm wanting to take some time and really appreciate the relationships that I have. So yeah, I think that's a midlife assessment. I think that people take their mid-40s from like 42 to 48 and take stock of where they're at and where they wanted to be. And I think for most people, your life doesn't really look quite like you thought it would. I know for me that while I've achieved a lot of the career goals that I wanted to have, I definitely thought I would be more financially set than I am. There's that whole I think when it comes to photography and art, there's that top 3% that really make a lot of money, and then the rest are either struggling or kind of getting by. And I've always been in that making enough to pay my bills but never feeling financially set. And I think that's something I'm reprioritizing too, is that my 20s and 30s, it was all about building the portfolio that I could be proud of. And now that I'm in my 40s, I'm like, okay, I need to really be thinking about my finances, and okay, I have 20 years to create a comfortable retirement. Because I definitely, focusing on art was not prioritizing my retirement. Liberating things about getting older is you realize that everyone really is intrinsically by nature built to survive. And because everyone's built for survival, they really live under the spotlight effect, where they're thinking about their actions and how it's going to help them to survive. And in realizing this, you realize, oh, nobody cares what I'm doing. Which is liberating. In my 30s, I thought it was heartbreaking, because I started to realize that I was doing all of these things for all of these other people, and it wasn't really fully being reciprocated. And I realized that Yeah, I mean, maybe it's because I live in I think bigger cities where the cost of living is higher, you get more of that survival mechanism comes out in people, and so their behaviors are a lot more selfish. But it also shows you what human nature is brought to when things are a little bit tougher, when you're kind of stress tested. And bigger cities stress test you to where you really see what people's motivations are. And the beauty in knowing that everyone's just trying to survive is you realize how liberating it is that, you can really do anything. You can dance if you want, you can paint if you want, you can make videos if you want, you can, as long as you're not hurting anybody else, you can really do whatever you want and nobody cares. Which is so nice. Look at this. It's like a cave back here. Oh gosh, look. Wow. Look at that. It really is like a cave. Oh my gosh. Wow. It's amazing. Oh, and a bird just flew over, but I missed it. Man. How cool. Oh wow, you can see somebody did like a fire pit back here. Huh. That's really cool. Look at that. Wow. So yeah, my 30s were heartbreaking because I was realizing people didn't care. But my 40s have been liberating because I realized I care about me, and I'm totally liberated by the fact that, we're all just trying to make it through, right? We're all just trying to get through this wild and crazy thing that we call life and enjoy the journey as much as we can. So I've kind of realized that, just have fun with it. As long as I'm having fun, and when I'm with other people, I'm enjoying their time and their company, we really are all just surviving in this wild and weird experience. It really is super weird. And the interesting thing is, in my 20s and 30s, I didn't understand how truly weird it is to be alive. I didn't. I would go out and have a little bit too much wine and do all of these things to I don't know, I thought that being tipsy or drunk or whatever felt good, and I don't have those feelings anymore because I feel like life is such a trip in and of itself. The mere act of existence is like being high or drunk, and it's just such a trip. Who even needs something like alcohol or any of that? Life is just so, it's like the most amazing experience. It's such a trip. This place really makes you feel like it's such a trip because you feel like you're on another planet. I mean, look at this place. Oh. Oh. So yeah, my midlife crisis, which I like to call my midlife assessment, has been having me reassess my priorities, having me reassess my morals, my beliefs, my values, because I had completely different perspectives on the world when I was in my 20s or 30s. I see the world in a completely different way than I did when I was in my 20s and 30s. So I've just been kind of spending this time rethinking things and kind of thinking, okay, well, since my values have shifted a little bit, how do I want the next 20 years to look? And most importantly for me, I think, is the first 20 years of my life, I really was not paying attention to my finances at all. I was really just building my portfolio. And now I'm thinking about the next 20 years and realizing that I really want financial freedom. I really want to feel financially secure enough that I can, you know, just be financially free. And that's a really, I think that's a new priority for me. Oh, look at this. Makes me want to sing. It's so beautiful. I do want to say, you would think with all these rocks out here, you would think it would hurt my feet, but it doesn't. It's really crazy. It feels so good on my feet. Like seriously, if you've never walked around barefoot in nature, take your shoes off. It's amazing. Like, it is really liberating. Just like realizing nobody gives two S's about what I'm doing. It's that liberating. Take off your shoes. It's the way we were meant to walk around. Okay, I'm bringing you over here because I want to show you something. There are these rocks up here that look like they just like got tossed up there. Like, look at these rocks. You can see they're like a different color. See, they're just kind of like resting on there. Like, here's one. See? They're like resting on there. Look at that one. I'm going to zoom in on it for you. Do you see that? It's like they got tossed on there. These look like they got tossed down. Isn't that interesting? See those rocks? Totally different type of rock, just like tossed on there. Like that one. See? That's the kind of stuff that trips me out now. But when I was in like my 20s and 30s, I wouldn't have even noticed it. Yeah, so I think that's another thing too, is like the little subtleties. It's almost like when I was in my 20s and 30s, I had a broad kind of spectrum view of life. And then I got into my 40s and it's like, okay, now that I've processed the broader view of the world, I'm now noticing the details. And I think the details of culture and society and nature and all of that is what makes your values shift, is because you've already processed and gained understanding in a broad view. And so then you start looking a little deeper and you're like, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. That looks a lot different than I thought it did. Look at this. I mean, look at this. How is this even real? Like, how? One of those things that, like, I don't know if it's going to translate on video to like how amazing it is in person. You just don't know. I mean, it is amazing. Like,